Hello, my name is Fidel Martinez, and I am an audience engagement editor at the Los Angeles Times. I am also the creator and writer of the Latinx Files, which is a weekly email newsletter that focuses and centers Latinx stories. The original conception for this newsletter actually began in late 2018, but it wasn't until November 2020 that we launched. Part of the reason why we were able to launch was, I believe, because of the aftermath of the George Floyd protest, which forced a lot of newsrooms to sort of reckon with the way in which they cover communities of color. So prior to working at the Times, I had spent over about a decade working in media that centered Latinx stories. Prior to LA Times, I was at Me Too. And then before that, I was at Fusion. So telling Latinx stories has always been a career priority for me. And that's just rooted in the belief that we are a huge swath of the population, and you can't accurately tell the story of America or of California or even Los Angeles without adding or including Latinx stories. So what's different about this product than other products that we offer at the Times is that this is digital only. And part of the reason for that is with digital content, you sort of have an infinite amount of space to publish things, whereas with the paper, it is a very limited product. So therefore, that's the focus on digital. And not only that, but market research and just about every study will tell you that Latinx audiences over-index for mobile and social media use. So it made better sense to approach the audiences where they were already at. In terms of what the newsletter is, it's a collection of aggregated stories from around the web and including the LA Times, as well as some original reporting. A huge element of the newsletter is, and it's something that I've believed from the beginning, is that even though I am Latinx and even though I am the one writing the story, I have no illusions speaking for the entirety of the community. And I think it's important to disclose that. So as a result, one of the things that I've tried to implement in the newsletter is to make sure that audiences know and feel that this belongs to them. And one of the ways in which that is manifested is by constantly doing audience callouts, making sure that they feel like they're very much a part of this process. One recent example was over the last year, COVID has obviously been a huge storyline. And the Times and other outlets have reported about how the Latinx and Black communities have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic across the board. And one of the things in which I felt the newsletter could serve a purpose was to turn it over to the audience. I put out a call on Twitter asking people to, basically telling people that I was creating space in the newsletter, devoting editions in the newsletter to let people submit memories of loved ones that they had lost to COVID. And I mean, one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most impactful additions to the newsletter was one in which I did very little writing. It was just the intro to this presentation of people's memories of loved ones that they lost to the pandemic. And we try to do that, anytime someone would email us a story, we would just put it in the newsletter. My background is in audience engagement, which means that part of my job is, managing and monitoring the social media accounts of the LA Times. So in a way, it's a very front-facing position. We sort of serve as the first point of contact for readers in terms of our content. So I think that sort of gave me an advantage and sort of realized, like, becoming aware of what kind of stories people were talking about. And that has been instrumental in making sure that the newsletter is, covering stories that are important to the community. One thing that I'm very proud of the newsletter is that from its inception to its execution, Latinx staffers have been involved throughout the whole process. In addition to me being the writer, the newsletter is edited by Angel Rodriguez, who is Cuban-American, and the art director is Martina Ibanez-Valdor, who played an instrumental role in shaping the visuals of the newsletter. When we started brainstorming as to what this newsletter would look like, one of the things that I really wanted to, touch upon was a nod to, the rich culture and history that Latinx people have in this country, but also talk about how, we're looking towards the future. So we discussed this and we talked about different visual elements that sort of tied the two themes together. And ultimately we ended up with this logo, which is a nod to traditionalism, as well as a nod to the fact that, most Latinx folks are digitally savvy. And so we wanted to include that in the visual design of the newsletter. And the conversations behind the logo and the name were basically had between myself, the creative director, Martin Ibanez Baldor, and Angel Rodriguez, the editor. So we discussed this and we wanted to come up with something that reflected the very much online nature of Latinos, Latinx people. And that's why you have sort of that MySpace era logo that's also, very much a nod to traditionalism. For me, the newsletter is just a launching point. I think it's a case study in how to effectively reach out to Latinx communities in a very open and honest way. In an ideal world for me, like this would expand to more digital coverage of Latinx communities, sort of use this as a launching point to either do live events, to do other products like zines or maybe podcasts. But for right now, this is the starting point. And I think there's a lot of value in learning and being open-minded with how audiences react to this product, because ultimately Latinx experiences, there's no such thing as one singular experience. We contain multitudes. And in order for us to be able to communicate as many stories, it requires getting that input from the audiences.